On in, everybody. We are broadcasting. We are recording. We'll give you all a second to get your audio set up and your video set up. I am Eddie Gordon, Community Manager at Pragmatic Institute, and you have joined us for another Pragmatic Institute webinar. This one on the topic of market research and customer interviews. As you are all getting your technology set up, let's do a quick little icebreaker here. You will notice at the bottom of your Zoom screen that you have a button both for chat and for Q&A. Let's do a little test and see if you can find and tell the difference between the two. Through the course of the webinar today, if you would like to chat with each other, witty comments on the state of the world, whatever, those go in the chat. If you have a question specifically for one of our panelists today, you're going to stick that in the Q&A, which I will keep an eye on as we proceed. So let's see if you can tell the difference. Everybody find that chat button. If you would, answer this question in the chat. What scares you about market visits? Stick that in the chat. And let's see what we got here. What scares you about market visits? Eric, there are worse problems than knowing what to do with your hair. I'm just going to say that up at the top. We'll get the bald jokes out of the way. Phil's got me on that one. Nothing. Nice, Glenn. Nothing. Fearless. Being kicked out. Ooh, ouch. Okay. Initiating the visit. I'm with you, Liz. Not quick enough to respond to questions. Yeah. Stuck on support issues. That's where you use the phrase, I will investigate and get back to you on that one. These are amazing responses, and we've got the juices flowing on this topic already. Panelists, pay attention. This is the stuff that folks are a little bit worried about as far as market visits, so keep that in mind as we talk today. A couple of housekeeping items to cover before we get started. First of all, this session is being recorded. Anyone who registered for the webinar today, you will get a recording of it, along with any resources that we talk about today. They'll come straight to your inbox in a matter of days. So that is cool. Once again, my name is Eddie Gordon, courseware designer at Pragmatic Institute. And let me take a quick second to plug October 16th, on which will be Pragmatic Institute's Future of Product Management Summit. This is an online summit. We did it last year. It was a big deal. We're doing it again this year. We've got a lineup of powerhouse speakers from across the product industry. There's a sneak peek at them on the slide there. Register for that if you've not done so yet at pragmaticinstitute.com/conference. Check that one out. And lastly, all of the panelists you're hearing from today are from our Pragmatic alumni community. Anyone who takes one of the Pragmatic Institute courses is automatically enrolled in the Pragmatic alumni community. How do I do that, you ask? I want to be in this community. You take a course. And wouldn't you know it, here is a 15% off discount for any Pragmatic Institute course that you can use right now. Fall is a great time to get in that last course that you need for that certification. Just use the code Pragmatic15. That's Pragmatic15 as you're checking out at pragmaticinstitute.com, and you too can have 15% off of that course. All righty, gang, let's get down to the topic at hand. Our panelists, as I mentioned, are members today of the Pragmatic alumni community. These are students who have taken Pragmatic Institute courses, completely organized today's presentation on their own which is so incredible. These particular members of the pack are also what we call the pragmatic ambassadors. These are volunteers who assist other members in the community, and they set this wonderful tone that we have there of generosity and wisdom and experience that will be on display for you today, I am sure. Leading this wonderful team, Associate Director of Market Strategy at Wolters Kluwer, the Captain America to this team of heroes with the appropriate last name, Eric Capehart. How are you today, Eric?
I'm doing fabulous. How are you, Eddie?
I am so great, even more excited because you all are here. Eric, I'm going to hand the remainder of the time over to you and your team with the quick reminder to the audience as you have questions, stick them in the Q&A. I'll keep an eye on those. And then when you all are done with your panel, we'll pop back on and answer as many of those Q&A questions as we have time for. Eric, time is yours, my friend.
All right. Thanks a lot. Thank you for that awesome introduction as well. So, hey, everyone. Again, I'm Eric Capehart. I'm thrilled to be your moderator for today's panel, Beyond the Office, Mastering Market Research and Customer Interviews. So this session, as Eddie mentioned, is proudly brought to you by the Pragmatic alumni community, and we're excited to be here together, bringing a powerhouse group of experts together to explore how we can better connect with our markets through real conversations. So not dashboards, not assumptions, but true conversations. And before we dive in, just kind of a quick introduction to myself, who I am. Again, hey, Eric Capehart, Associate Director of Market Strategy at Wolters Kluwer. My background is in product strategy and digital transformation, particularly within the financial lending industry. I've spent over a decade helping teams really translate complex technologies into practical human-centered solutions. And if there's one thing that I've learned throughout that time, it's that you don't uncover real customer problems by sitting behind your desk. That's why today's conversation is, in fact, so important. We're going to be talking about how to get out into the market, ask the right questions, and truly listen. So our goal for today is pretty simple. It is to help you understand when and how to conduct effective interview conversations, the kind of conversations that drive product roadmaps, the kind that build internal alignment and ultimately lead to better business outcomes. So whether you're new to customer interviews or you're just looking to sharpen your approach, our intention is that you will leave today with practical strategies that you can apply immediately. All right. So before we jump into the panel, let's ground ourselves in some core concepts from the Pragmatic Institute. If you've been on a Pragmatic course before, this hopefully isn't a new acronym for you, but this is something that has shaped how many of us approach market discovery. It's called NIHITO, which stands for Nothing Important Happens in the Office. So if you have not heard that statement before, it may sound pretty bold, but it's powerful. It's a powerful reminder. If we want to build products that solve real problems, we have to get out of our internal bubble and talk to the market. So the NIHITO concept is really about listening. It's not about pitching. It's not about selling. It's about showing up with curiosity and a willingness to learn. And when we talk about the market, we're talking about really three key groups: customers, evaluators, and potentials. These are folks who have already bought and are using the product when we talk about customers. These are going to be the people you have easy access to. They can tell you what's working, what's frustrating, and how your solution fits into their world. Their feedback is super valuable, but remember, they're already convinced. So while they help us improve, they don't always help us understand what it takes to win new business over. So that's where you have your evaluators. The evaluators are the people who are actively considering your product or maybe your competitor's product. They're in the decision-making process, and talking to them helps us understand what matters the most when choosing a solution. And finally, there are your potentials. These are the people who fit your target profile, but they haven't yet considered your product. This group is going to be gold for uncovering unmet needs of the market, validating your messaging, and spotting opportunities you maybe didn't know were there. So, as we get into today's panel, keep this acronym in mind. The goal isn't just to talk to people, it's to talk to the right people, ask those thoughtful questions, and really listen. That's how we move from assumptions to insights. So, with all of that preface in mind here, let's meet our panelists.
Eric, quick note, were you sharing your screen during that?
I was. Am I not? It says I am. Are we not seeing it?
I am not. Anyone else on the panel seeing Eric's screen?
I see it.
Good. All right, you're good.
Keeping me grounded here. All right, just making sure we can see it. Okay, I pulled up my chat too, getting confirmation. And just for everyone's reference, I went and pasted some of those definitions into the chat as well for you to refer back to in case you want to. If you weren't seeing my screen before, like Eddie, we'll pretend that these were on screen. They weren't. But let's get into it. Let's meet our panelists real quick. For the sake of time, I'll just give some quick introductions to everybody. As you see them on screen, starting with Phil Faust. Phil is the founder and principal consultant of Faust Forward. He brings a cross-functional lens to strategy and innovation. His background is in sales, product, and go-to-market leadership. Next up, we have Elizabeth Goldberg. She is the principal product manager at SAS Institute Incorporated. She has over 20 years of experience in B2B tech. She connects risk, fraud, and compliance analytics with the global markets. Mike Smart is the founder and managing principal at Egress Solutions Incorporated. Mike's led over 400 client engagements and has helped launch tech solutions with over $500 million of impact. And of course, last but certainly not least is Angela Sutton. Angela is the founder of Market Fast Forward Corporation. Angela is a Silicon Valley veteran, and she is a best-selling author of the book Sell Bigger. She specializes in feedback scoring, product-led growth, and growing revenue from existing customers. So let's jump into it. To help kind of set the stage, give us a little primer of what's going to provide the biggest benefit to everyone on today's call. Eddie kind of stole my thunder with his intro question, but for those of you who hopped on late, we want to ask it again. We have a quick poll question teed up for you, and that is, what is your biggest struggle with market research and customer interviews? We've popped a poll on screen for you just now, so no need to type it in the chat. Just go ahead and respond to that question on the poll, and we can see those results coming in real time here. And we're going to allow that to kind of drive some of this conversation so that way we can help you overcome whatever that challenge is that you are in fact facing. So we'll give that just a second here. I know for me, it's always been kind of a combination of these things. You'll find that as you overcome one challenge, one starts to become a little bit more prevalent, but really getting those customers and organizing the structure is always a challenge for me. So it looks like polling answers have kind of stopped, and it looks like we're pretty well spread across. Squeaking it in just by a couple percentage points is asking the right questions, getting honest feedback. But just second to that, we've pretty much got tired of getting customers to agree to it and identifying the right customers. So looks like we're going to have a pretty good discussion today because we're covering all of these points. So thank you everybody for indulging me in that quick poll question as we kick things off. And so as we look at things kind of sequentially, let's dive into our first topic, which is the power of market visits. Now, this is a little bit of a preface to actually diving in, but I'd love to hear first from Angela. I want to bring you in. You've built your career helping SaaS companies uncover deep customer insights. How do you decide when it's the right time to get out of the office and into the field?
Thank you, Eric. I think that it is more a matter of being disciplined and building it as a forced habit. So I actually time block in my calendar. So I've built a block of time carved out in my calendar every single week for interviews. And then I decide I'm a big believer in, in keeping an interview very focused and short, so that there is good ROI. We had one piece of feedback in the chat that was a challenge. And so I decide on a purpose for each. It might be customer retention, it might be tuning the roadmap, or developing a better model for my customer persona. So I decide on what that purpose is, and then I just have a target list of customers, and I get prepared with the right questions, and I kind of have a go-to list, which I'm gonna share with the audience, which is it's like asking the right questions that are centered around 7 things: problems, examples, why, workarounds they're using, outcomes, roadblocks, and impact. And I know folks asked about what kind of questions to ask. These are crafted to get real answers, to avoid what's called confirmation bias, which is just confirming what you as your product manager already believe. These actually dig really deep into what the customer's reality is, their day-to-day life, and what problems that they're dealing with. And so I'm happy to share that resource as a resource to those attending.
Excellent.
And here's the other trick. I mean, I think when I'm doing these interviews, I'm always trying to be really careful about capturing exact words. It's selling internally, selling to customers is all about emotion, and so I'm capturing exact words that my customers are saying. That's going to help me with my customer persona and with getting team buy-in. Because when I'm talk about if I talk about what a customer specifically said versus I ask for a feature that implements what they said, my team remembers that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And those are some great points around the being careful around how you listen, avoiding that confirmation bias. That's something I think a lot of people do end up struggling with, is going in with a certain mindset and only hearing kind of selectively what you want to hear, leading that conversation. So I think when we approach things with an open mind, we can often have really revealing conversations versus just confirming what we already believe. And so I'm curious about times when maybe a market visit has revealed something that completely changed the direction of your product. Phil, I know you have some experience in that arena. Do you want to share a little bit with us where you may have experienced something along those lines?
Sure. I actually have it was a really good experience very early in my career. I was working with a sort of a custom software company, and they were building an application for an industrial business. And we had this tablet, product that we were actually creating for them, and it was great. It was going to knock their socks off. It had all these bells and whistles. Well, we built it out as this touchscreen device, which today we're all used to. This was a little while ago, and it wasn't commonly adopted technology at that time. So before we got to the build point, we actually went out and visited some of our customers, some of our potential users. These folks are doing like welding and working with large industrial. Every single one of them was wearing these huge gloves, right? Big fireproof, electric proof gloves. And we're like, this is never going to work. This is going to completely fail. So it was just a really good experience that stuck with me forever. That's just, you got to get out there and you got to visit your customer. You got to see how they're doing their job. You got to understand, what their environment is like before you develop a solution for them. If you do it in that bubble, if you do it with the very best data and information, but not having a real understanding of them and their workspace, you can go completely off the rails and develop a solution that's never going to work. We figured it out. We put these nice little buttons on the panel. It all worked out, and it was something that they could even use with the gloves. But without going and doing that sort of ethnographic research in the field, our solution would have fallen flat, and we would have completely failed our primary customer.
I love that example. Definitely a great example of there are certain things you don't know until you know, right? Until you actually talk to the customer and start to understand what is their day-to-day like. You wouldn't, that would have just been a major oversight and would have cost you a lot of time and energy to really go back to the drawing board and fix that. So that's great. So now, we've kind of set the stage for why some of these market visits are in fact important. One of the things that you all highlighted as one of your big challenges is getting the interview in the first place. So you've established that why, it's important, but how do you actually get into that interview process? And a lot of times you're having to work through some internal communications. A lot of us try to work collaboratively with our sales organization to engage with those customers, kind of get access to those customers. But how do you build that trust with sales and your support teams to actually gain access to customers? Liz, I want to bring you on. You've worked closely with sales teams at SAS. How do you build trust with sales so they're willing to actually give you access to their accounts?
Yeah, it really starts day one with sales, because when you're doing things like this, if you talk to sales about talking to accounts, if you're thinking in terms of like a win-loss program, for example, contacting customers that you've recently won or you've recently lost, you ask sales, I love my sales friends, sales are going to say, well, it was because I won because I was a great seller. I lost because the pricing was terrible, the product was terrible, or marketing was terrible. You're going to get one of those three answers. And if you can build trust with sales day one, embedding with them, understanding their pain points and showing them that, hey, I want to do this research, whether it's win-loss or customer interviews or whatnot, I'm doing it not so I can get feedback on you, salesperson, but so I can get feedback on the market to inform the roadmap or marketing or understand the market better. And I'll share the insights with you. I think that really goes a long way. The one thing I do want to mention, Eric, is you mentioned customers, evaluators, and prospects or perspectives early on. And I want to make sure that you also don't forget to engage with your partners, your your sell through partners as well, because they have very valuable insights from a roadmap perspective and from putting my product marketing hat on a persona and from a marketing perspective as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's important to keep all of those perspectives in mind. So build those relationships, help everybody understand the common goal and how you're going to help sales. Angela, you've talked a little bit about relationship building. What tactics have helped you build goodwill with your sales and support teams?
Yeah, one resource I think is very helpful if you haven't read this book already. It's called Influence by Robert Cialdini. This book will help you to get buy-in with both your team and with sales for the purpose of securing an interview. So I use reciprocity, which is one of Cialdini's 7 pillars of influence. And what I'm trying to do, let me give you some examples in which I'm basically putting money in the account manager's piggy bank so that then they're comfortable paying me back with an interview. I'm wanting to be seen as part of their team to make them successful. So I conduct sales trainings and I actively offer to help them fine tune their sales decks so they're customized for what the customer needs. And then I'm the go-to person for creating webinars that, again, help them pull existing customers back in so they can find out what's going on in the account and hopefully sell more and make the customer more satisfied. So I'm building a lot of the trust, I think was mentioned in the chat, that you need so they see you as helping them. And then secondly, for getting customers to agree, well, I'm looking to what's the reason they wouldn't agree? What are their fears and doubts? And they're wondering what's going on in their head is, will agreeing to an interview actually help me? Is it good use of my time, good ROI on my time? And I don't want to be pitched, right? I do not want to be pitched. So I mean, for that, here's another really good book. It's by Chris Voss. It's called Never Split the Difference. He talks about something called tactical empathy, where I'm going to acknowledge their objection before they raise it. And so I'm going to say something like, you probably get a lot of interview requests and don't have time for most of them. And that's why this is going to just be you and me on the call. So then I'm addressing the, I'm not going to pitch you. I am here to listen to what you need, not pitch or sell you anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great statement. Very powerful statement right there. And that lowers the barrier to entry just by making that simple pitch. And I've read that book as well. It's a great book on any type of negotiation, and negotiation doesn't necessarily need to be we're sitting across the table negotiating a contract. Negotiation happens in your everyday life. It's as simple as getting the interview. So
100% about getting buy-in.
Yep.
Techniques
My, Mike, what's your perspective on taking the first step to getting a customer to agree?
Well, I think it starts early. I think you set the tone, and I believe Liz references as early as you possibly can. If you're starting a program, if there is a program, then I would say you need to manage expectations internally before you go outside. That sets the right groundwork or the right platform or the right foundation. Generally, if you think about this programmatically, not a casual NIHITO activity, but where you've got teams involved, what sales is going to be concerned about is the skill set of the people doing the interviews. It's easy to do this one-on-one. I got you. I've been in sales before. I know what your background is. I know what your hurting is. I won't screw this deal up for you, or I'll avoid these deals. But then how do you, as if you're a team leader, create and can make that commitment across the board? You've got to set people up to make them successful. So what you can do with sales and the supporting organization is show them how you would build out a programmatic approach that guarantees that there's going to be no blowups, that there's going to be no missteps, or if there are, and there will be, there's a path to mitigate. Start by going after customers nobody's interested in. Don't go into the biggest, heaviest, visible accounts, trying to step into the middle of it. Don't go into accounts where there's a deal closing in Q3. Don't go into an account where the CEO's been in there. So on personal experience, when I started doing this, I went to all of the trash accounts, and they were literally trash accounts. And what I started being able to do was harvest. And once you harvest one or two deals out of what the sales team calls trash accounts, then you're a hero. And now you've got license, you've got trust, you've got street cred to go wherever you want to go.
That's excellent. Yeah, having the contingency plan and then looking in the areas where everyone else has essentially kind of given up, lost motivation. That is gonna make you the hero. So great. I think the challenge of landing these interviews, dealing with some of the internal struggles of working collaboratively with other teams, that can really demotivate us at times. And even if we see the importance of customer reviews, it can sometimes make it so we are doing them less frequently than we really should be, which leads me to our next poll question that I want to throw up, which is how frequently are you actually conducting customer interviews? How frequently are you getting out there and having these conversations? So we'll put that poll up on screen as well for all of you to respond to. And as that comes up, I want to pose the question to some of our panelists as well. Mike, you emphasize the why behind a lot of this stuff. How frequently are you actually inserting that into practice and actually getting in front of customers?
I've talked to a lot of clients, and I've heard variability around this. And one of the things that I would say is there is no precise, exact answer. It is the tenor of your company, the culture of your company. If you sell seven-figure solutions, having a call with the client once a week may be a little bit overreach. If you're selling $5,000 solutions, you could probably have that frequency every day. The point is, set up a practice, make it a habit, and be consistent. And the most important thing is develop, I'm talking to team leaders now again, develop a way to aggregate, you don't want to aggravate, but aggregate the information, aggregate this unstructured data in a way that you can show progression, you can show learning, you can show insights. You can even spot and show people that occasionally we get lucky and we help sales find a deal. Whatever that PR piece of this is to show that this program has legs, it has value, and most importantly, there is a return on investment. And to me, that's the gold in this, is setting up this. You want to use the James Clear example of subatomic habits, or whatever that kind of dynamic you want to use, is setting up something and running with it and keeping it vibrant and keeping it going.
Excellent. So our poll results are in. Looks like there are a few people who are doing it rarely and not at all. The majority has responded with once a quarter or more, which is great to see. There are a lot of you who are out there doing the thing. You've got it done. But there are also several of you who are, not taking the opportunity quite yet. And we want to help you overcome that challenge. So get out there and do it. Don't be afraid to do it. And we want to help set you up for success by using some of the tactics that Angela shared, that Mike have shared, in order to set up the process. Now, of course, once you get that buy-in, once you secured interviews, preparation truly is everything, because you want to have these conversations be meaningful. So leads us to the question, what should you do to make the most of that time? How do you overcome some of the mindset challenges that come into play when it comes to actually conducting the interview, so you can uncover deeper motivations, not just surface level stuff? So Liz, should you have standard questions that you ask every single interview?
What I like to do is I do like to have standard questions for the interview. I'm going to caveat that by saying you can have standard questions depending upon the standard questions that are not standard. And by that, I mean, you can have a standard set of questions by the different users, the different user personas, or by the different buyer personas. Or if you sell into multiple industries, for example, you can have standard questions by the industries. I like the standardization of questions because it does allow you to see the trends and aggregate the data, as Mike was saying. And now with the advent of AI and AI-based tools, it's a lot easier than it used to be when I first started doing it. What I will say, though, is even if you have a standard set of questions, like some that you've developed or like the ones that Angela showed earlier, don't be afraid to go off script if you need to. For example, to ask clarifying questions. What made you think of that? Or what were you feeling when you did that or said that, or when that happened? Because that only through that can you get the best insights. If you think about it, the thing that our parents always told us, people like to talk about themselves the most. And no matter how much time you do have with the customer evaluator or potential, once they say yes, they do want to engage.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love your point around kind of remaining fluid, have something prepared, but don't necessarily be married to it. Allow yourself that freedom to pivot in order to drive the conversation further. So, we've talked a lot about expectation setting in this process as well. Mike spoke to it a little bit about setting expectations internally as well as externally. Angela, you kind of showed earlier a checklist of things that is your standard process. Angela, how do you set expectations going into the interviews?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to do first is to get the customer's guard down. So the thing I mentioned before about I'm here to listen, not to sell you anything. And then I'm going to sort of try and drive it to, I think, to Liz's point, that it can be, and it works better if it's a little bit customized. And one way to do that is out of in the intro, of like relating back the conversation to something they have told a member of your team. So you could say, for example, that in your conversation with the account manager, you mentioned you were interested in us improving this capability. So that kind of like leads them to feel like the conversation is then customized. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to set things up a little bit more in that I want to understand how you work and what roadblocks we can help remove. And then the second thing I'm going to do is, and when we get to sort of how things get derailed, I'll tell you why I'm doing this. I'm going to say, I'm going to frame it as, I'm going to ask you 5 questions. I want the good, the bad, and the frustrating so that I can help you the most. And why I'm doing that is because if we derail, I'm going to take them right back to the fact that I framed it, that we're going to ask those questions in this interview. That is the purpose of the interview. And then, Eric, you mentioned getting the right people in the room. I will talk to sales, customer support, or people that have come in and left because I have their contact information. So I want to look. I want to talk to a variety of people. I want to talk to users if the topic is something around a minimum viable product. I want feedback on it. I want use cases. I want to know how good the onboarding went for them. Then I'm going to look at buyers and people that churned or never converted. So I have a lot of customers that they have a free to paid type of model in software. And so I want to know why they didn't convert to paid, for example, after the trial. And I'm looking to sort of understand 3 things: why they joined, what almost stopped them from joining, and then in the case of churned customers, what we might have done to make them want to stay. So I'm looking at the buyers from that perspective. And then finally, the evaluators. I'm looking for feedback on competitive, I want competitive information and buying criteria, how they buy. If it's a larger corporation, it's always really important to understand who the buyers are, who the influencers are.
Excellent. Well, that is a great segue into our next segment, which is the interview itself, effectively interviewing. This is where the magic, or sometimes the mess, can happen. If you aren't prepared, it can be a mess. But I like what you said, Angela, about kind of laying some groundwork and using those guiding questions as almost your North Star that you can redirect back to if the mess starts to unfold. So Mike, I know you've led hundreds of client engagements, as we heard in your brief bio there. What techniques do you use to help customers feel comfortable and have them be open to sharing candid feedback?
So it builds on some of the things that Angela laid out. I like to call it building a relationship for the meeting. Whatever method, whatever means I can to put this client, customer, potential in the center of this meeting. And that starts with having as much information about them as I can get from salespeople, from sales support. If I can get access to the CRM system, it's learning so that I don't start the interview like a lot of us have experienced when someone asks you your name and you've already been, they're supposed to be familiar. So you get those things out of the way. The next thing is to disarm. And I think this has been talked about, and disarm in a way that says that I genuinely want to hear what you have to say. And that means I call it the rule of 70-30. You have to do 70% of the listening and 30% of the talking. And a good use case or good measure to do this is read their body language. By the way, I do these in this kind of forum, a Zoom environment. I like to record them. That de-emphasizes my need to lean into note-taking and have my head down so I can maintain eye contact. I've never had a customer or a client or a potential or partner say no to the recording. We're just at that age now. And then that allows me to really listen and really stay present with them and read their body language. And they're responding to me real time. When they see that I'm interested and I lean in, doing like this, they know that he's here, versus other kinds of body. And the same thing with them. If they're starting to close off, I can redirect. I can take the questions in a different direction. I believe in sticking to a time limit. So if I promise 20 minutes, it's 20 minutes. I'll do a time check if we're getting really juicy stuff. I think it was Liz and Angela brought this up. Sometimes you hit pay dirt. You get to the person's total reveal. They are sharing everything. It's the emotions. And you don't want to shut it off because most people won't do that with you. So time check. We're at our time. Can I spend a few more minutes with you talking about this? Because you don't want to let it go. These are the things that you want to take back to sales. These are the things you want to take back to your product partners. These are the things you want to take back to your sell with partners, because this is the messaging, core messaging that will drive your positioning and drive your value proposition. You don't want to miss out on these.
That's a great point. Being able to almost deflect to the time and being respectful of the time when things do maybe start to go sideways. Angela, you were speaking about that, how you handle when things start to go awry. How do you handle if a customer gets upset or they bring up a support issue?
Yeah, I mean, basically, we can end up veering into bugs, or the session, if you're not careful, turns into therapy because we're trying to be empathetic. But obviously, we want to sort of steer it back to the purpose of the interview. So basically, there's prevention in the first place of this, you're going off topic, and then mitigation. So, for prevention, I mentioned that I'll set the expectation. I'll ask you 5 questions about your challenges. But I'm also going to say this to them at the end of that. So I'm going to say, I'll ask you 5 questions about your challenges. Sound good, right? Those 2 words. What I'm doing there is I'm getting what's called a micro commit from them, that this is what we're going to discuss in the meeting. Those 5 questions and their answers. And they agreed in their mind now to discuss the questions. So what if that doesn't work? So now emergency 911, they go off topic anyway. Then I'm going to acknowledge it by repeating back what they said. So you said this thing. And then I'm going to say that, I'm going to empathize and say, that sounds frustrating. Would it be okay if we finish these 5 questions first and then circle back? So then I'm promising them that we are going to get to their issue, but drawing them back to the purpose of the interview.
I love that. I love that so much. Having the micro commit, I had wrote that one down because that's a powerful kind of, I don't want to say trick, but it's a mental strategy for engagement with the customer and making sure that you're aligned on the purpose of the conversation. So that's fantastic. All right. And then, so once we have actually conducted the interview using those techniques to keep things on track, keep us focused, keep them open and honest, we want to take all of those comments. Hopefully you've recorded it like Mike talked about. Hopefully you've been taking verbatim notes that are truly capturing the essence of their motivation. How do we take all of that content, turn it into something usable? Now, what do we do? So, Phil, how do you ensure that insights are used effectively?
Sure. So, absolutely. I mean, Mike's point was a great one, and making sure you're recording, or today using an AI tool to help you either in person or virtually to kind of capture insights and feedback, I think is a huge piece of it. What I always have done and sort of pushed is, write it up when you're done doing your interview. A nice technique you can do today is just pop up your AI tool of choice and ask it, to challenge you and ask you some questions about your interview. And you'll find it's a really good way to kind of even reinforce what you've talked about and get maybe some additional questions. Kind of an interview on your interview is a really good way to sort of cement and highlight key learnings. And then roll it up. Once you've talked to your 6, 8, your 12, whatever you're looking for in terms of qualitative feedback, roll it up into a short report. Pull out those key nuggets, those highlights, the key findings. They might be product related, they might be sales or service related, and make sure you share that report with the right teams and the right leadership within the organization to, again, as all my panelist colleagues have said, keeps that sales relationship strong, keeps that buy-in there, so that they see what you're learning. Oh, hey, this competitor's out there providing this offer right now that we hadn't heard about. It's great to hear that. And then most importantly, right, as product managers, bringing that back to your team, bringing your learnings back to your team and explaining to them what's been learned, what that means for your roadmap, for your go-to-market plans, for your strategy, and integrating those changes or those learnings into the work that you do and that your team is doing. And again, you want to take a little time. You don't want to talk to somebody and hear one really interesting thing and then run, right? You want to get some consistent feedback, so you start to hear something that's more than a one-off, that's an actual trend or an actual item to chase. that's when you're ready to kind of roll it up and get it back to people. But I've often done sort of even just like a Friday report, a short set of bullets of here's what sort of we've learned this week. If we're doing it that frequently, if it's a monthly thing, you can get it out. But some way to just make sure everybody who's involved in the go-to-market action as well as the product team are learning about what's here. If you have a really engaged group, like maybe your product and engineering team, you can even do just sort of a little talk, a little stand up, a little highlight. But again, salespeople, folks like that are often very busy. So starting with something simple they can ingest on their own time is usually the best way to warm things up until that flywheel really gets turning at your organization.
Great points. Yeah, I mean, having some sort of format that you can put things into to keep all stakeholders in mind, because we do kind of sometimes tend to get wrapped up in our own little product world. But remember, there are other teams that are impacted by this feedback too. And to your point, we want to make sure that it's real feedback. There's an actual market trend. It's not limited to just one particular customer or the loudest voice in the room. So having some frameworks around how you leverage this feedback and how you share it internally is in fact important. Angela, I know you have some really well built out frameworks. So how do you go about scoring feedback, prioritizing, that sort of a thing?
Yeah, I mean, this is like really essential. So what do we do with all this wonderful feedback we got? And I love what Mike mentioned about recording and pulling out patterns, which AI can help you with significantly, so that you can start and then sort of tag those to different customer personas. But what I do, I'm really looking this feedback to drive my product roadmap. And so I want to be able to say yes or no to new ideas and features. It's really there's a lot of power, and I think Steve Jobs talked about this of the real power is in deciding what you won't be doing so that you can focus on what you will be doing. So I score and prioritize. So I'm going to cluster the feedback in themes, but then I'm going to run something called a RICE score, which is a reach, impact, confidence versus effort. That's a real quick way of separating the wood from the chaff. And it's pretty ruthless, but those numbers really aren't enough. I'm looking to align with the company strategy. So I want to add a trade-off between business value and complexity. And I have actual questions that I ask that let me assess this from the customer feedback. And what that does is once we have that, we have something quantifiable that we can use to start discussions with executives, the team, and get everyone to align on the strategy. So yeah, I have a little one-sheeter that I'll share with the audience on that scoring system that with questions that you can ask during your interview that'll help you, that'll drive into that.
Love the resources. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
turning sentiment into data is challenging but necessary.
Yeah, it is. And I'll say the other thing is, and I think we've all got to like, taken a product to beta and then only then discovered the real feedback. So the beauty these days of AI is that you can mock up the use model. And so I will do that to essentially mock up what the user experience is, because once the customer can see it, everyone's a good critic, right? They can tell you what they like and what they don't like about what you're proposing. And so there are just some very simple tools out there like Claude and Lovable that will allow you to just mock up the look and feel of what you're proposing with the flow interactively. So I'll do that as the final step of verifying the results.
Turning it into something. That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to leave time for some questions, but before we do, I want to just kind of go over some key takeaways that we've had from today's session. There's been a lot of great content, and I know I can speak for myself, and as well, I'm comfortable speaking for everybody else on the panel that we could literally talk about this topic in an 8-hour session. So limiting it to under an hour is probably the biggest challenge for all of us. So I think I speak for everyone on the panel when I say we're all open to continue the conversation in any format you would like. But we'll kind of get to my call to action in a moment here. But before we do, some key takeaways to keep in mind. Market visits, they're essential. You can't uncover real customer problems from behind your desk. So interviews, eliminating assumptions, aligning products with the actual needs of the market, that'll accelerate the market fit. getting the interview. It does take strategy. I know a lot of you spoke to the fact that that's your biggest challenge. So building trust with your sales teams, your support teams, gain that access, position your end goal as a support system for them, as a way to help, not to sell. Preparation will drive impact. Set clear goals, craft open-ended questions, avoid leading the conversation through that confirmation bias, and set something to ground yourself in. Bring yourself back to, like Angela said, your 5 questions or the time, being respectful of the customer's time. Really uncover the why behind those customer decisions. And then, of course, conducting interviews with empathy and rigor. Listen more than you talk. Employ that 70-30 rule. Let them talk 70% of the time, and avoid reacting to negative feedback. Document it, but avoid reacting emotionally. And then, of course, turn all of those insights into action. Synthesize feedback into themes. Score, prioritize, use those frameworks. So as we wrap things up, I will throw some additional resources on screen. I know we've pasted a ton in the chat so far, but some things that I would like to highlight. We have open-ended questions for your reference. We'll share the documents that Angela referenced, those sorts of things. And my call to action for all of you, as I mentioned, schedule your next customer interview. Take that step before the end of this week. Take a step towards scheduling that customer interview. If you are part of the Pragmatic alumni community, if you've taken a Pragmatic course, you're automatically in that community. So if you haven't jumped into it, jump into it and post and tell us your experience. We're here to support you, and we want to hold each other accountable throughout this process as well. So let's talk about it. That's why we are here. So I'm going to turn things back over to Eddie, because I know I've seen the chat jumping throughout this whole thing, and I do want to leave some time for questions.
You're not joking, Eric. Not just the chat. The Q&A is filling up. So let's get to as many of those as possible to round out the webinar today. Some of them are quick and easy, some a little more complicated. I'm gonna start with a quick and easy one. Angela, would you please hold up the 2 books that you recommended? Yes. Everybody wants the titles of those again. So we have.
I can paste links in the comments too. I'll go grab those. The first is Cialdini's Influence, 7 Pillars of Influence. This is just a very cool book, and it's a classic. So that's the first one. And the second one is by Chris Voss, who was a former hostage negotiator for the FBI. So wow. If he can do it, we can do it. And it's called Never Split the Difference.
Love it. There we go. And of course, as we have mentioned, everyone who was registered for the webinar today will get both a copy of the recording of the webinar, and you'll get the list of resources. Anything that we've mentioned today, we will send out in that email, as well as Angela's reading list will be on that as well. All right. Amazing questions in the chat. I'm going to start with, this was such a good question that I'm actually going to forgive Marlon for posting it in the chat and not in the Q&A, but it sums up several of the questions that people had today, and I loved it. Marlon says, a lot of times the sales database, like Salesforce, usually has mostly sales contacts who may not all be the actual users of the product platform. How do you all get to the actual users in a B2B space, specifically he's asking, once you've been given the primary contact from sales or customer success in order to build relationships with them to get them to participate? Great question. If you're talking about current customers, you're probably going to go through sales to get those lists. They were probably talking to buyers, not users. Does that make a difference to your NIHITOs, and how do you actually get a hold of the users? Handle, go.
Mike's got his hand up.
I think, first of all, if they're customers, you're going to have them cross-reference with your support database, right? So we have account architecture, account structure, buyer, users, you can sort that out. And then I would say, depending on where you are in the process, you may want to talk to the buyers as well as the users. I do. I want to reconstruct 6 months in, 8 months in. We sold you this promise. How have we delivered? Because if it's not good, the user is not going to be able to give you that view as well. So I think you need to balance them. Having access to buyers post-close and users, I think, is equally important.
Yes.
And just dovetailing on that, start with the buyer. If the buyer is the contact that you have, talk to them first, and then during that conversation say, who are your power users? Who are the people in your organization who are in this product every day, all the time? May I follow up with a couple of them, or could you introduce me to a couple? And you can go right through your buyer into your end user.
Love it. The answer
Yeah,
is both.
especially
Liz.
because in a lot of, very large organization, the economic buyer isn't the person that is out there doing the initial research. It's the users, it's the line managers that are saying, hey, we need a solution or we need this capability, and they're raising it up, and they are then ultimately pitching that solution to the buyer, who really essentially just signs the check because they have the approval authority.
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo to customer support database. In fact, customers are quite delighted when you actually pick up the phone and call them. And you've got the lead in, of course, of the issue that they had. But again, asking your contacts within the company, I'd like to understand your needs about topic, and who do you know that I could talk to?
Brilliant. Here is a wonderful question from Suzanne, who asked, how do you balance customer accessibility with strategic importance? So if I understand Suzanne's question correctly, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, she's asking about, should strategic directives be influencing which customers you're seeking for your market visits and your NIHITO? So first question, should that be the case? And secondly, how do you deal with that and still get a broad range of interviews from your customer base?
I'll jump in. Yes, absolutely. The strategy should guide, you should have an addressable market you're targeting for your product or service. And you should have buyer personas and people within that market that you've identified as your primary targets. And that's definitely where you should start. Accessibility is, of course, challenging, but again, always start with making sure you're talking to the right person. Getting great feedback from the wrong person or somebody outside of your target market probably is going to be a waste of your time and theirs.
One thing I'll add on Phil's comment, and I'll just say broadly, this work we're talking about doing is not solo work, right? It requires a heavy alignment and reliance on sales, marketing, customer success, and executives. And I like the question because one of the things that I've enjoyed doing with clients and on my own when I did the job was the ability to show the relationship between what we're doing today and our strategy. Well, I got to know what our strategy is. I have to have a way of articulating that to the client that matters to them, not to me. And that means I need the help of sales. I need the help of customer success. And especially need the help of marketing, because that's where all the messaging happens. And if I can develop some hypotheses about what we're trying to understand about our strategy and use the interview process to validate them or throw them out, then I've done a great service to the organization, because the worst thing that hits any company in the tech space is making assumptions about what used to be the way the market worked. And guess what? We just watched a sea change, and we're all living through a sea change right now where everything is different. I'm not suggesting that this will give you massive insights to avoid disruption, but I think early seeding, and there's a great book that I love. It's by Rita McGrath. It's called Seeing Around Corners. If you want some real tactical driven methods for trying to get strategy connected to your customer facing activities.
I love it. We're turning into a book club today too. Wonderful.
Yeah, 100%. And with some of my larger customers, we do exchange roadmaps, and that can also be your guiding light. Understanding the customer's customer. Another.
Huge.
Here is a question from Lauren. We're going to get into some practical nitty gritty here now. Mike, I think you were talking a little bit about this one. So let me toss this to you first. What strategies have you identified to keep a steady stream of interviews and market visits on your calendar? How do you recruit and schedule them? Any practical details for keeping that pipeline open? Oh, you're on mute, my friend. I got to say it once per meeting. Somebody has to say it.
Dang it. There's someone that was supposed to be here today who amps up on this is Shane, right?
Mhm.
And Shane runs a large team, and he says, I give them quotas. I give my team specific targets to go out and meet customers on some cycle. Now that may disrupt some people out of a comfort zone, but I believe in doing that, setting the standard and the expectation and make it workable and make it livable, and putting some mild, nothing heavy, some mild incentive on the idea that if you believe you can go out and meet 9 customers a quarter, that's less than 1 a week, or some other number, then the learning, the dynamic of what's happening inside the team starts to really take shape. I've done that and I've seen we all get smarter about the market-facing issues. We all get collectively better at asking questions. We all get collectively more confident about how to engage customers and prospects. And that's when the sales team will turn to you and see, these guys have their stuff together. They know what they're doing. It's great if one person does it on a team. It's better if 6 people are doing it.
Brilliant. Hey, gang, they say time flies when you're having fun, and this has been super fun. So time has flown. It is up. We want to respect people's time because they got jobs to do. There are so many more great questions that have come in the Q&A. I'm going to call an audible, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to pick the cream of the crop here. We're going to actually post them in the Pragmatic alumni community so that this panel, as well as the community in general, can give feedback on those. We will collectively solve all the problems in the world by that approach, which has been my great plan all along. So, gang, one last pitch. Of course, if you've not done so yet, go and sign up for the Future of Product Management Summit 2025. Do that at pragmaticinstitute.com/conference, where you will be fed and nourished all things product. And then, of course, if you need to get into the Pragmatic alumni community, you just take one of the Pragmatic Institute courses. Go ahead and use code Pragmatic15 as you're buying a course, and you get 15% off, and you will be able to do that. Eric, my congratulations. You have assembled a wonderful, wise, and generous team here today. We are blessed for having been able to hear you. Everyone, continue the conversation over in the Pragmatic alumni community. Big thanks to our panel, and we will see you all again next time. Bye, everyone.
Thanks all.